Hi friends, she is Med here, and today I'll be talking about how I studied for the MCAT in 3 months, and how I ultimately scored between the 90th and 100th percentile. So if you're interested, keep watching. Before I go into my study schedule, I want to talk about the resources I used. So these were the only 3 resources I remember using. I don't remember using anything else. So the first resource is the AAMC official MCAT resources, whatever it is. I encourage you, if you're able, to at least get the section bank or practice exams for extra practice. I ultimately got 2 practice exams that were administered. I'm not sure when, but they were officially administered examinations years prior to 2019. So I thought those exams were super helpful, and I used those 2 exams towards the end of my studying time. So early April, late March, I believe. And then there was a critical analysis and reasoning skills section bank. For me, I could never get enough studying for cars. Like, I could always improve in that area. So I loved having extra cars practice. And they also had section bank questions for chemistry, physics, biology, biochem, psych, soc, so that was super helpful as well. I also used Khan Academy a lot. I love Khan Academy. They have a section of their site devoted to MCAT, and I believe they're partnered with AAMC. They had a lot of content review videos that I would use in conjunction with my Kaplan course if I needed any more like assistance with content review, and like any area that I felt a little weak in, I would go watch some Khan Academy video and feel a little more comfortable and confident. Also, I used their cars passages for extra cars practice. And lastly, I took a Kaplan in-person course. We met with an instructor who taught the MCAT material for that week. There was an MCAT channel that came with a lot of review videos. Also, the course came with like 11 full-length practice tests, which was super helpful. I also loved using the adaptive Q bank and list questions on that. So if you can't afford the course, maybe go for the adaptive Q bank, because I used that even when my MCAT course ended. And of course, it came with the 7th subject MCAT review set. So this was my January schedule. So I started studying for my MCAT January 12th, 2019. That was also the day my MCAT course started. I think the night before I took a diagnostic exam, but I wasn't really studying hardcore for the MCAT until January 12th. And my MCAT date was set for April 13th, 2019. And mind you, I was taking my MCAT in the spring semester of my senior year. And during that time, I was taking 14 credit hours. I was also a student researcher devoting 10 to 20 hours per week. And I also tutored and mentored 5 to 10 hours per week. That was like my set schedule that was unaltered all throughout January. For social life, I didn't really have much of social life. I rated myself a 2 or 3, but you know, some days I could give myself a 1 or 0. And I know that's horrible, but honestly, my January schedule was not the best. But anyways, I woke up at 6 a.m. every day, and this was January, February, March, April, just so I can get used to waking up and functioning in the mornings. And I would try to get as much study time in for my university courses before I started class, just so I could do my homework before class or in between classes. And then once I was done with class, I would just do MCAT studying, and that schedule actually worked well for me. I was done with class by 12 or 1 p.m. on most days, and after class I went to research for 3 to 4 hours, and then I did my MCAT studying. Yeah, as I said, January was not the best. It was not it. It was not cutting it. I knew I had to let something go by that time, and ultimately, like, it had to be my research, and I felt bad about that, but I had to let it go. So come around February, I had 10 to 20 hours more for myself, which was great, because like during January I felt like I didn't have any time to just be. Like, I always felt like I was on the go. There was something else to do. Like, I always had a responsibility to fulfill. It's good to have responsibilities, but if you don't have time to like relax or talk with friends, talk with family, like, you go mad. So I had to give that up, but I was in a good spot with my research. By that time I already finished my projects. I was wrapping up a paper, so we were just in the editing stages, rewriting portions of the paper. So it was a good spot, and if I was going to lab, lab. It was just to talk with my PI and lab mates in regards to the paper and future projects, so it wasn't much of a time commitment anymore. So my February study schedule was changed a lot. I'm just kidding. It was changed just a little bit. Now that I had 20 to 20 hours for myself, that's like normal like self-care time for me anyways. Even with that, I upped my study time a little bit more for the MCAT. So my Monday to Thursdays, they looked like this a little bit. So I would study for the MCAT 3 to 4 hours. I would do my homework before class or in between classes. So by the time class was over, I was just studying for the MCAT, and then I would finish my day about 6 or 7. But even then, I would study for the MCAT more. So maybe like I would study 5 or 6 hours on these days. I'm not sure, but I think 3 to 4 was like on average. Friday, I would take my practice test. So whenever I would take practice tests, I simulated actual testing conditions. So I made sure like I was in a quiet area. I actually bought earplugs to plug my ears up, because I know they give you that during your test day if you request them. So I wanted those. I had a dry erase board and marker, but there were the wet markers, not the dry erase markers, because I know during your actual test day you're not given pen and paper. So I want to get in the mode of writing something and not being able to erase it, because that takes time. And then on Saturdays I had my MCAT class, which was 3 hours. And then after my MCAT class, I would review the practice test from the day prior. And then after that, I would either review the MCAT class material from that day or weeks prior, and then do some school homework. And then on Sundays, I would go to my MCAT class in the morning for 3 hours, and then I would study for the MCAT 4 to 6 hours after that. And mind you, in between these studying times, I would fit in like lunch, dinner, breakfast. I'm not really accounting for that right now in my schedule. And also I had a tutoring job and a mentoring job, so I would fit that in as well. When March came around, I felt confident. I felt good. So early February, I didn't mention this before, but early February, I finished content review. During February, I was either studying for my MCAT class, we would have homework before class, or I was just re-reviewing things that I felt weak on. But by March, I wasn't really doing content review that much. So whenever I would study for the MCAT, it would be more so practice questions and reviewing those practice questions. By March, I felt like I set up a great foundation for myself. March 2nd was actually the last day of my MCAT course, so that gave me about 6 to 10 hours more each week. My schedule changed just a little bit. I just upped my MCAT studying time. And mind you, again, I would do university homework before class or in between classes. During March is that now I'm taking practice tests on Saturday instead of Friday. So Fridays were my relaxation days. If anything, I would review like some flashcards for a little bit, my MCAT quick sheets for like maybe an hour or so, and then for the rest of the day, shows with friends or just hanging out with friends. So Friday was mostly a relaxation day. I would sleep early on those days because the next day I took my practice test as usual, and then on Sundays I would review the practice test from the day prior and then study for my MCAT, of course. This is my jewel. This is the schedule I used after my MCAT course ended, and having the structure was super helpful for me. Day by day, I knew what to study, and I could set aside time for areas of weakness. All these days were adaptable to how I was feeling that day, what I was scoring. So let's say I was taking a couple, like maybe I was taking a section test for physics that day, and I saw that I was scoring really highly, which is nice. And then I took a section test for psych soc and noticed that I wasn't scoring as highly as I did other days. Then for the rest of that evening, I would study a little more psych soc stuff alongside, chem and biochem, just so I could build upon those strengths in cars and stuff. And also I was doing 2 course passages every day. I actually started doing this in February, late January, just because I knew like I could never get enough studying for cars in. So that was super helpful. So yeah, so my MCAT day was April 13th, 5:30 a.m. on the dot. I got ready, I ate breakfast, I read through my MCAT quick sheets booklet, did a quick prayer, then went to the testing center, and that was that. But let me tell you, after that test, I felt so free. I remember driving back and then going to my friend's room, texting my friends like, hey, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I'll drive. I felt so free, and that wasn't only because I was done with my MCAT, but I felt so good about that test. Like, mind you, there's always like some questions on the MCAT you felt like could have gone either way. Like maybe you got the right answer, maybe you didn't, or maybe you just didn't know, but you chose what was best. And I felt confident at the end that I did my best. I studied so much for that, so much self-discipline, so much self-motivation, so much sacrifice. So it felt really good just to know I gave it my all and I worked so much for it. And the MCAT really, to me, like I thought of it as like a test of form. So I built form during the preceding months. I taught myself how to endure, fatigue from staring at a screen. And mind you, I was graduating the next month, so now I had a month to live out the rest of my senior year. So it was nice to have like bliss of not knowing what my score is and just relaxing for the last month. But my scores came back. I was super pleased with my score. It was a wonderful way to end my senior year, and I felt at that moment like I was done. But I really wasn't, because application season was there, like it was in my face. We'll explore that in later videos. I'll talk about using MSAR for MCAT schools and Texas schools, and how long it took me to write my personal statement, recommenders, activities, and all that in the following videos. I just wanted to thank you all for watching, and until next time, she is Med.